This is John Nugent.
I'm Sam Long.
And I'm Ron Peters.
Welcome to the After Class Podcast.
Because the best conversations happen
After class.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the After Class Podcast. We're glad to have you along. We got some really exciting things happening here in Michigan. But of course, by the time this comes out, it'll have faded. But right now, it's really in the forefront. And that is the University of Michigan football team won the national championship, which you're a state fan, so you don't care. Was very excited. I was with two of my oldest buddies watching the game. Yeah. We've been Michigan fans for a long time. So it was a really good time for us. So congratulations, Wolverines. For those who hate on the Wolverines, and I'll save that.
Interestingly, today you're wearing state colors, and I'm wearing U of M colors, and I'm more state, and you're U of M.
Yeah,
so we didn't.
That is very odd.
I did wear Michigan colors the rest of the week up till now. But
yeah.
Whatever.
Well, and I am a state fan. I'm green and white all the way, but I rep our state, and U of M did. I love it. Congratulations, my best friend Larry. I know you're happy out there, Larry. Very happy for the results of it. So,
yeah, and personally, here's how I feel about rooting for your normal nemesis. During the season, I root for them to die in a fiery crash. But in the postseason, I want them to succeed because their success reflects on your conference, which you are in.
Right. Yeah.
So if every Big Ten team wins their bowl games, that looks good on the Big Ten.
I agree
with
with
that. People are like,
yeah.
I hope they all die all the time. Like, I think you're missing the bigger picture, but that's fine.
Yeah, I could not root against U of M. Like I have friends who define their loyalty by who they root against.
Yeah.
And I'm not that kind of a person. Yes, I root against U of M, especially when MSU is playing them. But no, I'm happy that they won. Good job. And especially because now we got like the Detroit Lions who won their conference or in the playoffs. Hey, Michigan's looking good right now. The state of Michigan, the Palm, the Mitten's looking pretty good.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a fun night, Monday night. Also here in Michigan, we get our first major snowstorm supposedly coming this weekend.
Yep.
So maybe by the time this podcast comes out, we'll have dug ourselves out. I don't know if it's going to be that bad or not. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, just so everybody knows, it's January 10th right now when we're recording. So you're going to hear this like in 10 days. We'll find out by then whether or not we got the big snow. But they're forecasting a really 10 inches of snow here in Lansing
and like
for the weekend.
50-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah.
So
and
it's
like
not
18 degrees.
Fun.
Yeah.
There.
Just cuddle up in the house.
We'll have to cut open a bantha to survive. Is that right? Did I say that right?
That's right. Star Wars.
That's right. Get Luke stuck in there so we can keep him warm.
Quick correction, those are not banthas. Banthas are the big woolly creatures that are from the desert planet Tatooine. The creature that Luke holes up in is called a tauntaun. That's all, thanks.
All right.
That's what's happening in Michigan. That's the update for all you all.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we've said also.
All our New Zealanders here.
The New Zealanders, exactly. First week of classes, too.
Yeah.
New semester has begun. So, yeah. I'd say I'm off to a decent start.
Yeah.
Not going to rave, but it's been
There's
good.
a lot of good excitement coming back. It was funny. The cafeteria on Monday was like, electric might be a little much, but there was a lot of
high energy.
Yeah. So it was fun.
You must have had different people because my classes, for the most part, have been low energy. I'm trying to
notice
get
I said
them
the
going.
cafeteria, not classes.
Yeah.
They still don't want to go to classes, but the cafeteria is fun.
I'm trying to get people talking and moving, and they're just not responding very well.
Calisthenics.
There you go.
All right. So it's time to transition. And we kind of have some news within our transition.
That's right.
Because, that a couple of episodes ago, maybe it was the last episode, I'm kind of losing track. But when we introduced you to the history of interpretation of Song of Songs, Sam had some questions. I was throwing out some numbers that were ballparks that I'm like, I got to go brush up on the details. So I have some, maybe some answers to some of your questions and some precise information on some things that we gave some generalizations. So one of the things we talked about was about Song of Songs being like more commentaries written about it than any other book of the Bible. That is true, certainly for the Middle Ages.
Okay.
Middle Ages, hands down, more on Song of Songs than anything else. There were at least 100 different commentaries from the 6th century BC to the AD, to the 15th century.
900 years.
Yeah,
Wow.
and that's a bunch of those were before the, printing and literacy was really high. So the fact that you have that many during that time period speaks to just how big a deal that book was.
Impressive.
Bernard of Clairvaux is the one who did a bunch of sermons. So there's 86 sermons he did on the Song of Songs. I think I said around 100. That's the precise
That's
number is 86, which
Wow.
is
It's a lot.
very
It's a lot. I agree.
impressive. Sam asked the question on Calvin's take on the Song of Songs. He didn't, unlike most people of his era, he didn't do a major work on it. But he does interact with some people who want to exclude it from the canon that we talked about last time, and he seems to indicate that the book deals with the subject of human love,
Okay.
and that would not disqualify it from canonical status.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, just some bits and details from the history of interpretation.
I like the fact that those questions stuck with you enough that you took the time to go find the information. You know, it's not like, well, I have a general idea. It's like, no, let's track this down. Let's get some good numbers on that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, devil's in the details sometimes. So,
That's
want
right.
to make sure you have good stuff.
Yeah.
We're taking care of you, listeners. We want you to know that.
Yeah. So today we're going to pick up where we left off. We're kind of working our way through Song of Songs. I think last time we got all the way to chapter 1, verse 4.
We sure did.
We did, man. We were
3 whole
crushing it.
verses.
And just a reminder, we're kind of, the way we're reading it, we're going to read, like Song of Songs itself is broken up into different voices who are speaking. Sometimes it's the woman, sometimes it's the man, sometimes it's her friends. And this is another matter of update. Sam did
Right.
some research. We didn't know there was this, what do you call it? The modern day kind of slang word for a group of women. We determined it wasn't a gaggle.
We turned it was not a gaggle or a click. It was neither of those things. We didn't know. And right before the episode, I went next door to Todd Jones, who is our resident ministry professor. So it's obviously up on all the culture.
That's right.
And he said it is squad, which, like, yes, that's what I was thinking of.
The
And
squad.
so her squad is the one that pipes in every once in a while to either correct her or challenge her or other things they're going to do.
Encourage her.
Encourage.
That
right?
changes the way I think about certain things. Because I've heard that
Yeah.
term in certain contexts. I'm like, oh, now I know what they're talking about. So,
There you go.
hey, thanks for that.
Posse.
The female posse.
Yep.
All right. So, Sam, you want to kick off
Certainly.
our reading of
Yeah,
verse
well,
5 and following?
Yeah, we'll do chapter 1, verses 5 through 7. I am black and beautiful, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Do not gaze at me because I'm dark, because the sun has gazed on me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept. Tell me, you whom my soul loves, where you pasture your flock, where you make it lie down at noon. For why should I be like one who is veiled beside the flocks of your companions? So it starts with an interesting thing. I am black and beautiful, O daughters of Jerusalem. And for me, that has a couple of things going on. It's, first of all, a reminder that this is an ancient Near Eastern culture, right? This is not Anglo-Saxon.
Exactly. Right.
And so that keep that in mind, which I think sometimes modern American readers forget. We assume everything's about us and all the rest. But there's that. But there's more going on there as well. There's this idea that in the ancient world, especially during in this context, we mentioned this before: agrarian society, right?
Yep.
And so what happens when you're out in the fields all day?
You get a lot of sun.
You get a lot of sun.
Yeah.
So you get pretty dark in the summer working in your garden.
Oh, big time. Yeah. I am a dark complected person. I'm German. Don't get me wrong. I am a European, but
You tan easily.
I do tan very easily. Yes. Do you?
No one cares about this at all.
You asked it.
I
so-
have had sun poisoning multiple times in my life.
Oh,
At
really?
the same time, I'm not like palely, like immediately burn. It's just I've just been stupid a couple of times.
A little too much.
So I'm
sun.
kind of like an in-betweener. I'm not
Gotcha.
like really fair, but I'm not like, oh, look at my bronze beauty. Like that's not not me either.
Yeah, I started out really pale complected. I had freckles when I was younger, and
Okay.
but as I've aged, I've become and have owned a pool. I tan pretty easily and pretty well, but I have a process of easing myself into it.
Which-
I've learned.
Yeah. This is so far afield. No, like I don't love being in the sun.
Oh, okay.
Like I love being outside in the shade, but like in the full sun, I can't stand it. And so that's part of my problem is I don't ease myself into it. Usually what happens is I get too much exposure too quickly, and that causes problems.
Yeah, I love being in the sun. In fact, you're right. We're going too far afield. I had to learn to start wearing a shirt during the summertime
Yeah.
because I used to just always take my shirt out when I was working on the farm, and I've had like 3 or 4 spots removed now, just non-malignant stuff. But I'm like, I don't want to go through that anymore. I guess I'm going to start wearing a shirt.
Yeah, we'd appreciate if you wear a shirt in the office too, but that doesn't happen yet.
Well, it's warmer in
Walks
here,
around.
so it's walking around without a shirt on.
Yeah, but this verse, to get back to the text,
Thanks,
I mean,
John.
you might even, a better translation might even be, I'm black but beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
which does mean something different in 21st century,
Fair enough. Yeah.
racial issues. We're not talking here about African American versus white,
Right, yeah.
Anglo-Saxon product.
Right.
It's not that. This is, she is speaking to her skin is dark, and in that society, dark skin means you're probably from the lower classes.
Yeah.
And because if you have pale skin, you have the luxury of being able to stay indoors and
Right.
away from, the heat of the intense sun or the intense heat of the sun. And so for them, like royalty or high class people, wealthy people would pride themselves in their very white complexion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so she is pointing out that she doesn't have that. Right.
Yep.
And she's saying, but don't discount me.
Yeah.
Right. I am beautiful, and there is a reason for my dark skin.
Mhm.
And she gives that in this passage.
Yeah, and I would also say that word for beautiful, it does mean beautiful, but it also comes from a word that means desirable. So I think it's kind of a both and. Like, I'm not ugly because I work in the field. I'm actually desirable and something you should long for. Yeah.
Well, and that makes me, again, going back to something I said in a previous episode, wondering if this is low poetry. And again, not low in terms of quality or anything like that, but the poetry of the common people. This isn't the poetry of the king's court, but this is the poetry of the people who gather around the fire at the end of the workday and are singing songs or something like that. I don't know that, but it's statements like this that make me go, this is not the court of the kings. This is the regular folk. So I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, this is a theme that's a theme of the book, is the tension between the low class and the upper class. And at the end, when she chooses Solomon, her own vineyard over Solomon's, she's making a choice for the lower class people.
Yeah.
And a lower class lover.
Right. Yeah.
in this context.
I'd also say, just a side note, people don't know the tents of Kedar, which obviously, why would you? That was just one of these Bedouin wandering tribes from Arabia, and they were known to have black wool as their tents. So the idea of, it's like,
Okay. Yeah.
what would be a modern something you associate with something that is dark and black? It'd be the same sort of idea.
Dark, like, the shingles on your roof or something like that.
Right.
That's ridiculous. But it's that
Yeah,
idea.
that's fine.
Yeah.
So it moves on and says, don't look at me because I'm dark, because the sun has gazed on me. And then there's an interesting turn, and I'm intrigued to hear what you guys have to say about this. She says, my mother's sons were angry with me. They made me keep of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept. So there's this conflict that's taking place between mother's sons. That could be a couple of different things. That could be her brothers, which is another way of saying it, or maybe like half brothers, or anyway, what have you.
Would it again, here I'm just trying to think of what the Hebrew would be like. Is it easier to make the poetry line up by saying my mother's sons rather than my brothers? Like, just from a poetic point of view, would they choose that wording because it just keeps the meter or whatever the poetry is based on?
Yeah, there's something consistent in the book. When you talk about the bride, when you talk about her brothers, it's always in relation to the mom.
Yeah.
You don't hear about my dad
Oh, okay.
or my brother's dad. And, and one of the things that scholars have said about this is, when you read the legal material, like of Torah, and because of kind of a patrilineal society, the laws and the inheritance laws kind of run through the male line. And we've talked in previous episodes of the economic purpose that serves. But in this kind of love poetry, you can actually kind of see something that balances it out. It would seem like it's definitely a dad-centered society. But yeah, in this song, you'll notice it's a mom-centered. So if it was just this one line, I might say, well, maybe it strikes better or worse in Hebrew, but it seems to be a pattern throughout the book. When it comes to marriage and courtship, mom is playing a big part in it and is the point of reference.
Well, and did moms play a bigger role in, like, facilitating marriages? Like, we think of dads like giving their daughters away, but in the lead up to that, do moms play a bigger role in bringing a young man and woman together? Again, I don't know the answer to that, but
at least this book shows that the moms play a role.
Yeah.
If you only read like the Torah laws or even the narratives about the patriarchs, you just see a lot of father involvement. But this is testimony that mothers were involved too.
Yeah.
And I think this is in keeping with what we talked about last episode, where there's the female is the dominant voice.
Yep.
Right. Both of the speaker, but also here we have sort of the focus on the woman. Just I mean, that's just interesting. I'm not saying anything about that. Just it's interesting to observe.
Yeah.
So what's the problem here? What has she done wrong that
Yeah,
have incensed the brothers?
Yeah. I've wrestled with this, and all I could do is come up with a theory, and that is that there is this tension in the book about the one that she loves,
Mhm.
right? And there are things keeping her away from the one that she loves, and so it could be that the brothers don't necessarily approve of the guy that she's fallen for,
Mhm.
and they've kind of kept her under watchful eye, maybe working their vineyards and things like that, and given her less agency over her own vineyard or something like that. It could be a part of the plot of things that are getting in the way of her and her beloved.
Mhm.
And so maybe the brothers don't love him as much as she does.
Okay.
One idea.
Interesting. I wonder how much of this is euphemistic. I wonder, and I don't know, but how much of this is they're mad because like the vineyard is her virginity, and that she
Mhm.
has lost her virginity, and now they're upset about that to either this guy they don't like or to
Yep.
or to whomever else, because like they made me keep. So it's that keeper of the vineyards is a double, right? Actually keeping the vineyards, which is why she's dark complected, and keeper of her own virginity. And so has she failed in both accounts or just one? And are they using the idea like kind of moving with like, I am black because I have been in the fields and I had this one job to do, but I didn't do it. And to which three are like, oh, I know what the job is, not to have sex with a man. And anyway, so it's an interesting, it's so just short and quick and concise that you can't read too much into it, but I do wonder.
Yeah, and the book ends with this notice of Solomon and all his vineyards, but she has chosen hers. And so the vineyard isn't just about field.
Right.
Yeah.
It's definitely about her agency and choice and lover and body at some level, offering of herself to her beloved. It's in the mix here.
Yeah, it sure is.
But like, keeping your virginity doesn't necessarily have dark or light skin involved. Like, and so there is this literal vineyard context right along with the metaphorical vineyard.
Right. Yep. So we'll see that throughout. But we won't make too many declarations now, but just keep that in mind as we go through, as this imagery comes up again. I'm going to keep going. John has a headache. Ron's got fog, so apparently I'm just doing all the talking today.
And you're doing a fine job of it, by the way.
In verse 7, this is my biggest frustration with the entire translational system of the NRSV and others as well.
Okay.
Tell me, you whom my soul loves. There is no word for soul in the Hebrew Bible. This annoys me to no end. The word here is nephesh. It is basically, it can mean life force, like who you are. Now, of course, we in the modern context will say that's our soul, but they had no concept of that,
Okay.
right? And so what she's saying is, tell me, you whom like, you're my everything, right?
Love with my whole being.
Right. That's what she's saying here, which is kind of nice. And so, nonetheless, I'll get off that soapbox, but I wish
But you had to get it out there.
we need to
right?
take soul language out of the Old Testament. John and I think we're on the same page on that. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
So she says, "Tell me, my everything, where you are doing all." Now we have all this this imagery back into the field again, and she says, I want to go after you, right? And where are you going to be at? Because I want to be down there. And then why should I be like one who is veiled beside the flocks of your companions? And so there's been, I think, some discussion about what does it mean. So in the ancient Near East, obviously women were more conservative. They were veiled most of the time, when especially unmarried women.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of this idea of like, I read it, you can read it as, I want to find you and become unveiled rather than being one of the other veiled women that are in just walking around. Like, I want you to know me and be able to distinguish me from everyone else. And that will happen when I remove the veil. That's one way of interpreting it. Have you thought of seen other ways?
Yeah, the veiling is a sense to be around him unveiled means she is his intimate partner.
Correct. Right.
Because, with all the other men, your veil is down. With him, you're not. Veiling is also associated with prostitution.
Can be.
So we saw Tamar in Genesis when she pretends to be a prostitute to seduce Judah into having sex with her so she could continue the lineage of her dead husband. There's a veiling there, and so some are trying to say, hey, make me an honest woman, make me your own so I don't have to put myself out there for other people. And so even prostitution may be metaphorical.
Yeah, I'm less convinced by that. I think that that may have happened, but if most of the women most of the time were veiled, how would you distinguish between a prostitute and a not prostitute? And I think that has more to do with like location where you encounter them.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right? So Tamar was in a certain spot where one would go to pick up prostitutes.
She's in the red district.
Right. And so anyway, for me, it makes more sense of it. You're right. The unveiling is an act of intimacy that she would only share with her lover.
So if we tie this to the previous verses, then is this a statement that we've already consummated our relationship and that's why my brothers are angry at me?
Not necessarily, because what she's saying is, tell me where you're at. Tell me where you're shepherding the flock, like where you're doing it, so that I can come there and not just be a random veiled person walking around.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of it, and I'm not arguing for it. I was just trying to think about it in like the context. Like, why were they mad at him? What are we doing with the vineyard imagery and all that? So, yeah, just
in the end, there's the Sunday school version, and there's another. And I don't know that we can necessarily know which one. I think we definitely need to remove our Victorian glasses when we do this. But
are we getting into the not safe for work interpretation?
Not quite yet.
Yeah, there is, and later on there is a passage that most people think is a pretty direct statement of her keeping her virginity.
Right, and so
so that's the wider context also kind of informs this. We're obviously not there yet.
Yeah, and then of course there's we're going to keep going back to this, but is this one long poem? Is this multiple poems been put together?
Right.
And if so, are they out of order? Like, is this kind of talking about later, versus what you're talking about the virginal status?
Right.
Yeah, that's all on the side. All right, Whew. Verse 8. That's you.
Oh, okay.
And a change of voice.
Well, that's why it's me then. Chapter 1, verse 8. Are we going to get out of chapter 1 today?
Yes.
All right. No. Chapter 1, verse 8. If you do not know, O fairest among women, follow the tracks of the flock and the pasture. Oh, man. I'm going to start this all over again. I just totally blew that. Sorry, listeners. Once again. If you do not know, O fairest among women, follow the tracks of the flock and pasture your kids beside the shepherd's tents. And so they're telling her where to find them? Is that the idea?
Well, here's the question is who's telling her? It seems to be not her because, oh, fairest among women, right? We're talking about this woman. So someone else is calling her.
Is this the squad?
It could be the squad.
Okay.
That's definitely possible. I think some interpreters go with actually the man talking. And what they suggest is it's kind of like a little playful banter. She says, tell me where you're at. And he says, oh, you know where I'm at. Follow the tracks and you'll find me. And that's possible. Or it could be the squad saying, go get him. Like, you know how to get there.
Yeah.
I think either one's possible.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And it does, the very next passage does transition to the voice of the men or of the man. And so what's tricky is, if the shepherds, he's associated with the shepherd. And so if he's inviting her, would he use the language of the shepherds, or is that from their perspective, who's not a shepherd, which would be the women? And that's where it kind of goes back and forth.
Yeah, and it's almost like it's, I wonder if yes, he's clearly the shepherd, but it's like, hey, come in and join what I'm doing, right? Join me as a shepherd, even though she's not exactly a shepherd.
It reminds me of like Boaz welcoming Ruth, saying, here, hang out among these people, get in close proximity. That makes possible a further relationship.
Yeah.
Which apparently did happen at some point.
Fair enough.
So verses 9 and 10 are,
so good.
I get to read the man's part.
Finally.
Yeah.
Well, the
unambiguously.
I know, right?
the unambiguous man's part. And he says, I compare you, my love, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariots. Your cheeks are comely with ornaments, your neck with strings of jewels.
She's beautiful.
Yep.
You're wondering whether verse 11 belongs here? So verse 11 has the
Plural.
plural.
Yeah.
So maybe a switch back to the women.
Yes, yeah. Which is, and this is the frustrating part. Like the NRSV that I'm looking at has 9, 10, 11 together in a clump, where it makes sense for it not to be, but it's all so difficult.
Yeah,
And
that's why I have these notes here that
Yeah.
don't follow the NRSV paragraphs because
Yeah.
it doesn't quite deal with this. But here, finally, the man speaks,
Mm-hmm.
right? And maybe he already started in verse 8, hard to tell. But he's comparing her to one of Pharaoh's great chariot horses.
Yeah.
That's a compliment.
For
At
them.
least back then it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
I look like an old mare. What are you talking about?
oh man, it brings up so many memories. I had a friend, you don't care. I had a friend in high school who was funny to me, but like cruel to other people. And like he would come across girls and like he would to their face call them like horse teeth and all like
Oh my God.
Wow. Wow.
I know, right? And so anyway, that's what I sometimes think of things like that. Like that's not a compliment at all.
Is he
But
like
here?
drinking out of a paper bag in an alley these days? Like,
No,
Yeah, I wonder about that.
no, he is a minister.
oh,
Yeah,
that's great. That's great.
We both matured. Thank the Lord.
You
And,
grew up.
I grew up.
So he compares her to a stately horse. A good
Not an old nag.
and talks about it's interesting. Your cheeks are comely with ornaments. You don't usually associate ornaments with cheeks, but is it like a headdress that's kind of coming
That's
down and
definitely
falling
possible,
on her
right.
cheeks, right? And her neck with a string of jewels. We're used to that. I mean, that necklace
Yeah.
kind of material. But it's worth reading 11 right after this, which is probably like and so this is where it's kind of like a conversation with three parties. Like he's acknowledged her beauty and her ornamentation, and then the squad chimes in quickly in verse 11. Sam, you want to read that?
We will make you ornaments of gold studded with silver.
Yeah, so he's acknowledging her beauty and her decked outness, and they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, we will make you even more, and we'll be a part of decking you out to make you a fit partner for your lover.
Well, and it makes me think of like, again, if this was a performance, you have the man speaking and then the group behind them, we will give you even more jewels. It's kind of jumping in there.
Yeah, I think a sort of historical reference. I think it's King Tut, Tutankhamun. There was a drawing on a wall where the horses were decked out, like they weren't just wearing like harnesses and things, but they actually had like little danglies and bells and things. And so
Okay.
the imagery is like, how we know of those horses like that? You're like that when, like that. So not only are they Egyptian horses, which were highly sought after, but then they're also decked out for battle. Well, for them, for ornamentation, like you are. And so it's kind of like a double, I think, compliment.
Nice analogy.
For her. Yeah. Like something they know of that is highly prized and beautiful when ornamented.
Ornamentational fire.
Yes. just like she is. In her whatever.
So he thinks she's beautiful.
Yep.
The friends are all about making her more beautiful. And then the woman speaks again, Ron.
Huh. I'm doing the woman's voice again here, evidently.
But you got to do it a little higher.
That's going to be tough.
Higher.
12 to 14.
While the king was on his couch, my nard gave forth its fragrance. My beloved is to me a bag of myrrh that lies between my breasts. My beloved is to me a cluster of henna blossoms in the vineyards of En-Gedi.
So much.
Smells so good.
Oh, love Nard.
That nard smells so good. I have no idea what nard smells like.
So I think I have smelled it before. So the woman, the pint of pure nard that pours
Yeah.
it on Jesus' feet, right? So apparently nard is a big deal for Christians, and I think someone's like, "Oh, look, I got some nard." I'm like, that's not great. It's not awful, but it's just not. I don't know. It's not what we consider like cologne or perfume. It's different.
I wonder if the scent of it is really good, though, of covering up bad people smells.
it's
like
better-
that's what makes it great.
Yes, it's better than that for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, gotcha.
Oh boy. So, a couple things. The king's on his couch. So this is an interesting thing. He's on his couch and she's there with her nard
Necklace.
necklace. We should
Yeah.
market that.
Nard necklace.
They don't make many fragrant necklaces today, do they?
So there's been a rise of that with like essential oils,
Okay.
where you wear it around your neck. So some people have problems with smells, or just like so whether it's like frankincense or peppermint. I don't, but people do that I know. And so-
It's on the
that's
rise
new one
again.
to me.
It's making a
Yes.
comeback.
Yeah, I should
After all these
suggest
years.
Nard.
I'm going to track that down and
Yeah.
see if I can find some
And-
Nard out there.
You know, where this, if I'm picturing this, I'm picturing inside of a palace, king, couch, whatever. But the language isn't quite as explicit as that. The word for couch is there's a word for like a round surface, table-y kind of thing. And then down in verse 16, it's referred to as being green. So this could be like a nature scene, like a beautiful spot of grass where they've kind of made their resting place.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily think royal palace, but again, we're using metaphorical language to
Yeah.
talk about the place of their dwelling.
Well,
So-
even the king doesn't necessarily mean Solomon. This just could be
Correct.
another time where she's referring to her, her beloved with this kind of language without it being literal.
yeah, so they could be taking a rest from the work and kind of under a tree, resting by the grass on the grass, nice soft surface. And grass doesn't grow a lot there nearly as
True.
much as it does here. So grass would have been a great place to kind of hang out, have a picnic, spend time with your beloved.
Underneath the tree, out of the sun.
Right. So here's what's fascinating to me. It's and I don't know what to think about it, but like the compliments for each of the other person are definitely from the perspective of the gender giving them. So for example, the guy says, "Dude, you're like an awesome horse," and the girl says, "Oh, you're like wonderful perfume around my neck." Like, and the other like, "That's not really a compliment to me, but okay, I'll take it." You know what I mean? It's just kind of it's this sort of funny thing where you see the perspective of genders coming out where that's not exactly the most complimentary thing, but we'll take it.
You're like this great sports car.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, okay. And then
Whatever, thanks.
And she says, "You're like the best curling iron I've ever had." Like, oh, okay. Always there for me.
I hadn't put that together. That's a great observation.
So yeah, she kind of like takes the man and like miniaturizes him, makes him small as in this little sachet of myrrh around her neck between her breasts, and it's very. I mean, this is very intimate, right?
It is very
They're
intimate. I agree.
Both evocative, but also like the location and all the rest. This is not something for everyone, and so it's we're little by little you see these hints of intimacy as it goes.
Well, yeah,
through.
just like I think I can't remember which way you said it, but like drawing him in closely. It's like, yeah, I lost where I was going to go with that, but yeah, just bringing him close to you and feeling the intimacy of close contact there.
The next section, which follows from this, is kind of interesting. It's we can try to do it together, Sam.
Sure, we're gonna go back and forth. I'm guessing you're gonna make me be the woman.
Well,
'cause
here's
that's
the
what
thing.
you're gonna do.
Well, I'm next. It's 15. So
Yeah, that's
I'm
real
not-
convenient. You skipped over it a couple
So-
times. That's all right.
The man speaks up in verse 15, and then the woman responds in verse 16a, and then 16b seems to be them both together.
Are we gonna
speaking-
try this?
Yeah, we're gonna.
This
we're
won't
gonna
be
try it
awkward
out.
at all. Let's go.
So, so here we go. Ah, you are beautiful, my love.
Thank you.
Ah, you are beautiful. Your eyes are doves.
Ah, you are beautiful, my beloved. Truly lovely. Our couch is green. The beams of our house are cedar. Our rafters are pine.
So you needed the two voices to
Yeah.
get kind of what's going on here. And you see that the dialogue is so closely tight. It's not like he has a long poem and then she has a long poem, although that does happen in the book.
Mhm.
Here, it's kind of back and forth. With
Right,
like
yeah.
the women, the squad, chiming in for a quick line, and then back to him, and then back to her, and then together. So there's a lot of diversity of how this plays out, and you really don't get it unless you hear different voices. So maybe that dramatic performance did something for the listener.
It did
What
something.
By way of
what it is?
clarification. But these are generic statements. His love. He calls her beautiful. Her eyes are like doves, and presumably there's a lot of white in the eyes, right? And big white eyes, and reminds you of the white of a dove, right?
Yeah, I was reading something where doves are sometimes associated with sex, with intimacy, with romanticism at the very least.
Yep.
Um,
Erotic.
I forget. It's so many things. And so, yeah, obviously, it's yes, you're the whiteness of it for sure, but in addition, this other aspect of it. Then she responds, very simply, "You're also beautiful and lovely." And then together they go back to that couch green imagery that you're talking about, where it makes sense to be like an outdoor picnic
Yeah.
of sorts.
Yeah, unless it's some kind of metaphor for fertility, fruitfulness.
Yeah.
Green, fruitful.
Sure.
Fertile. It's hard. And again, but the green of the field wouldn't be in conflict with that.
Right.
The image can be working in both directions there.
And then I'm not sure what to do with verse 17. I know what it means. The beams of our house are cedar, rafters are pine. We would, I think, modern day talk about, we're going to build a house together. I'm not positive that's what it meant back then.
Is it a statement about the strength of their love? The beams of our house are cedar. It's like it's strong. Like our love is so strong. It's like a well-built house.
Could. I'd go with that.
And another option is that, cedar and pine, they're both evergreens, right? And so we have this green couch. And so this could be describing either the house they imagine having together, a house with, like Solomon's, palace is built of cedar, right? Or it could literally be describing the place in the trees with the green grass where they get together, their meeting place where they have some privacy. There could be, so it's like, this is our place on the grass, and it's like our house with with the pines and the cedars, up around us as our kind of scenery. This is kind of like our home, our getaway place.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I mean, one last thing on those two is that they're both a very fragrant kind of wood, especially cedar. And she's already talked about fragrances and stuff like that. So could even, there's so many possibilities here.
Right. Which for me, again, speaks to the, to the sort of the beauty of it. That it's not just straight, this is what it means, period.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, our job is to highlight the possibilities and move on.
Don't get bogged down in them.
It's up to you, the listener, to make your own decisions on this.
They'll spend a bunch of time talking about your skin and how it does in the sun. Like, come on, let's go.
So we may want to go in this next one from, we have another conversation
Back
going
and forth action?
in chapter 2. And then the woman and her friends. So I guess, Ron, if you want to do the first verse, I'll do the second one. You want to do the third?
I think he should do the third.
Kind of go back and forth?
Yeah. Again, I think
You're not going to let me
Do we
want to
complete the scene then and go all the way to 7?
Yeah, then I'll do the woman to her, I don't know, maybe.
So there's the woman to the man, and then there's a woman to her friends at the end.
Yes.
So we'll let you come in at the woman to her friends.
Love it.
All right.
So verse 1?
You're going to do 1, and then I'll do 2, then you'll do 3, and then
Okay. Got
Sam
it.
will take us home.
All right. I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys.
A lily among brambles, so is my love among maidens.
As an apple tree among the trees of the wood, so is my beloved among young men. With great delight I sat in his shadow, and his fruit was sweet to my taste.
He brought me to the banqueting house. His intention toward me was love. Sustain me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am faint with love. Oh, that his left hand were under my head, and that his right hand embraced me. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or the wild does, do not stir up or awaken love until it is ready. So we start with flower stuff. Rose of Sharon situation, which isn't Jesus called the Rose of Sharon?
Yeah.
Isn't that one of his, and I don't know, it's weird. Based on this.
Yeah, Sharon is a plain along the Mediterranean coast between Joppa and Caesarea. So it's a place they would have been familiar with. And the rose could be like a crocus, right? It's a flower that is famously growing in that area.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion with a lot of scientific things like animals and plants and flowers. You'll see a lot of meaning of Hebrew uncertain situations because we know it's something like that. We just know exactly what based on fauna and flora, what used to grow, what grows now. And so it's some sort of a flowery thing. Rose and lily seen in parallel. The lily, but this is a side note for me, is the name Susan, Shoshana, comes from that word. That's just a lovely name, and like it means like a beautiful flower, like a lily or a rose or something. So, anyway, that's just an aside.
Yeah, and in that context, the lily grows up quickly. It kind of grows pretty well in that part of the world where the ground's not awfully fertile, but lilies do well, and it's available in abundance. So she's probably kind of being modest about how ordinary and common she is. She's like a rose of Sharon, a lily in the valleys, and he comes back, a lily among brambles.
Yeah.
Like almost like a diamond in the rough. He's trying to elevate her by lowering the surrounding brambles.
Is this where we get roses among thorns? Is this where the phrase comes from?
I mean, roses are thorny plants too, though,
Right,
so.
but like that saying, "You're a rose among thorns."
Okay, could be.
I don't know if it comes from here. Just it was a natural. Everyone knew that as it is saying. I don't know.
But the other women are the brambles. It's like she's surrounded by all these women, and there's a bunch of thorns. She's
Right.
the only beautiful one.
Yes.
Oh, the squad is offended.
And then we know, she's kind of being modest about herself. She's a flower, but she's a modest one. He's saying, no, you're more than that
Yes.
to me.
Yeah.
Among all the women, you're special to me. And then we know that she kind of changes. Like she's not talking to him anymore. She's not using you language to talk. She talks about her beloved to someone else. And he brought me forward to his banqueting house, and I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem. So it seems to be she's turned her attention to them, the squad.
Right. Based on these, this compliment that he gives to her. Again, like we talked about last time, it's like she's going back and she's, dishing about their little date and all the things he said. And they're all like, they're dissecting every little bit about it. Like, oh, okay.
What was he wearing? What did he say? What did he smell
Did
like?
he say it with a smile? Yeah.
Every detail.
There's some I don't know, interpretive things that take place here. Verse 4 especially, he brought me to his banqueting table, and then the NRSV says his intention toward me was love. Those of you who grew up with the King James, probably his banner over me is love.
Yep.
Which I will also say, I can't ever sing that song again. When I found out it came from Song of Songs,
Right, yeah.
and there actually was that was an old song. Like you guys know that song, right?
Oh, yeah, I know
Oh,
what you're
yeah.
talking about.
I think it's called "Banner Over Me Is Love," and but they tried to bring it back. I think sometime lately in the last probably 20
Did they?
years, and I was like, ugh, it hurts.
Do not make me sing
Yeah,
that
the
song.
note says that the Hebrew is banner above.
Yes,
So I wonder on what basis they went another direction.
So if I recall, that word for it does mean banner, but it's possible that it also can and deal with. There's a cognate, either Ugaritic or Akkadian, that means to see something, and so it sounds like his vision toward me, right, or his intention is how
Okay.
they went. But that's basing it on a cognate when it means something else in most of the rest of the Hebrew Bible. So
Right.
that's an interpretive choice.
But it is interesting how the church chorus tradition made this about God's love for the church.
Yeah.
In keeping with the allegorical interpretations. When in the context, everything we've read so far says, no, this is about a woman feeling secure, covered, protected, seen by her lover, and seen with a disposition of love.
And I wonder with the idea with banner is very different than intention. A banner is a military type of image
Yeah.
with triumph, and so it's almost like he's won me, he's possessed me. I'm his now, right? And that I think that makes more sense than the intention language.
Yeah,
Just because-
and love is the banner.
Right, exactly. It's
Yeah.
not it's not a forceful thing.
Yeah.
But it's that he conquered and he won, and now I'm his.
Yeah, and the imagery here in this poem switches. I mean, we just read a section where
Yeah.
it was about smell,
Mm-hmm.
right? Fragrance, nard.
You have to
But-
say it like that.
But now we've moved to tastes, right? An apple tree among the trees of the wood, great delight. His fruit was sweet to my taste.
Mhm.
So we've kind of switched senses here He sustains me in verse 5 with raisins, refreshes me with apples. I am faint with love.
Yeah.
And so it's, the question, I guess, is he literally providing sustenance for her, or this is metaphorical for,
Right.
he is, from a lover's perspective, he is satisfying my everything I want,
Mhm.
and everything I need, and everything I desire. To share in love with him is to be richly fed at the banquet of love, right?
Yeah.
More metaphorical there.
Yeah, either way, it's almost like when she says she's faint with love, it's kind of like, well, lovesick sounds a little much, but just very, like, she's just completely enamored and taken with him. And everything he provides for her and gives to her, she can't get enough of.
Yeah, and this poem, I think, this putting a big gap between verse 2 and 3 is important because, verse 2, chapter 2, verses 1 and 2 are like them affirming each other.
Mhm.
They're speaking back and forth. But here it ends with, in verse 6, the poem from 3 to 7, oh, that his left hand were under my head and that his right hand embraced me. It's like, oh, that we could be together.
Mhm.
Oh, that, he could be supporting me. Like, she seems to now be speaking from a posture of distance.
Mhm.
This is why she's back with her posse. She's not with him anymore.
Yeah.
And then she charges her friends not to stir up or awaken love until it is ready. It's almost like a warning, like, I'm lovesick, I'm separated, I wish he was here. This is what happens when you form a relationship, sooner than you're in a position to consummate it
Mhm.
Yeah.
or bring it to fruition. There's this ache inside. And she reaches out to the women and expresses this ache. And this refrain about not waking up love until it is ready is going to repeat several times throughout the book.
Mhm.
It's one of the repeated phrases that makes you say, as much as this is disjointed, it jumps from scene to scene, there are some common threads, and this is one of them.
Yeah, and that idea of until it is ready in the context of fruit and ripeness and so forth, like I think it's a beautiful way to sort of bring it all the way around. Like, he's got all this wonderful stuff, but you don't want to eat it too soon because it's not quite ready. It's going to be wonderful, but you got to wait for it.
It's not ripe yet.
Yeah.
Got to wait till it's ripe.
Yeah. And that's a real warning. I mean, this is partly wisdom literature that, when you get too quickly, too deeply involved with someone, you can arouse expectations before you're really in a position to meet them, which leads to frustration. And that seems to be part of the plot line that you need some of the poems.
Yes.
This wanting to be together, not being able to be together,
Yeah.
and this longing that ensues. But then sometimes there are these scenes when they're together.
Right.
And the question is, are those real scenes? Are those her fantasy, her imagination, her dream? What is going on? Is it skipping from real scene to real scene, or imagined scene to real scene?
Yeah.
And these are the questions that kind of occupy the minds of scholars trying to think and write and teach about this book.
Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about more about that next time. Thanks for joining us this episode of the After Class Podcast, After Class because
The best conversations happen
After class.
Nard.
Thank you again for listening to the Afterclass Podcast. ACP is hosted by Sam Long, John Nugent, and Ron Peters. Audio production is provided by Drew Nyquist, and social media is managed by Darren Harris.